My name is William, and I'm about to tell you the most embarrassing, complicated, and ultimately life-changing story of my college years. It's about how I fell in love with my roommate through a deception that should have ruined everything, but instead became the foundation of the most honest relationship I've ever had. It started during my sophomore year at Northwestern University. I'd been randomly assigned to room with Joseph Chen, a pre-med student who seemed to have his entire life mapped out with military precision. From day one, Joe was everything I wasn't: confident, popular, effortlessly athletic, and apparently irresistible to every girl on campus. Meanwhile, I was the quiet literature major who spent most of his time reading in corner. The problem wasn't that Joe was mean to me. Exactly, it was more like he treated me as his personal entertainment. He'd hide my textbooks and watch me frantically search for them, laughing when I finally found them in ridiculous places like the refrigerator or taped under his desk. He'd bring dates back to our room and make a show of asking me to leave, always with that cocky grin that made my stomach do weird flips I didn't want to, and managed to make me feel like a guest in my own space. "Come on, Willie," he'd say, using the nickname I hated, but couldn't bring myself to correct him about. "Don't be such a hermit. Live a little." The worst part was that despite his constant teasing, I found myself looking forward to his attention. Even negative attention from Joe felt better than being invisible to everyone else. I'd catch myself staring at him when he was getting dressed, admiring the way his shoulders moved when he was doing push-ups in our tiny dorm room, or listening to him hum in the shower and imagining things I definitely shouldn't have been imagining about my stray. Everything changed on a particularly humiliating Thursday in October. Joe had brought back another date, a blonde sorority girl named Brittany, who giggled at everything he said. I was trying to study for my Victorian literature midterm when they burst through the door, already making out. "Oh, Willie's here," Joe said, not even trying to hide his amusement. "Don't mind him, Britt. He's basically furniture at this point." Brittany giggled, and I felt my face burn with embarrassment. I grabbed my books and headed for the door, but Joe's voice stopped me. "Actually, Willie, since you're leaving anyway, could you grab us some condoms from the drugstore? I'll pay you back." He tossed a 20 at me, and it fluttered to the floor at my feet. That was my breaking point. I bent down, picked up the money, and looked him straight in the eye. "Get your own condoms, Joe." His eyebrows shot up in surprise. I'd never talked back to him before. Whoa, Willie's got some fire in him after all. I left the room burning with humiliation and anger, and spent the next 3 hours in the library plotting elaborate revenge fantasies. That's when I saw the flyer on the bulletin board: student tutoring services, help available in all subjects. It gave me an idea so ridiculous, so potentially disastrous, that I almost dismissed it immediately. But then I remembered the way Joe had looked at me, like I was nothing more than an inconvenience in his perfectly ordered life. And I thought about all those girls who seemed to captivate him so effortlessly. What if I could be one of them, just long enough to show him that I wasn't as pathetic as he thought? The plan formed slowly over the next few days. I'd create a fake identity online, pose as a girl who needed tutoring in biology, Joe's strongest subject. I'd flirt with him, make him interested, and then somehow use that to get back at him for all the humiliation. It was stupid and juvenile and bound to backfire spectacularly, but I was 19 and heartbroken and not thinking clearly. I spent a weekend creating Emma Richardson, a transfer student from a small liberal arts college who was struggling with pre-med requirements. I used photos I found online of a pretty but not obviously modeled gorgeous brunette, created social media profiles with just enough detail to seem real, but not enough to invite deep scrutiny. Then I reached out to Joe through the tutoring service. His response was almost immediate. "Hey Emma, I'd be happy to help you with bio. Want to meet at the library tomorrow?" For our first meeting, I told him I'd gotten sick, and asked if we could do an online session instead. We video chatted for an hour, with me carefully positioned so he could only see my shoulders up, wearing a wig I'd bought and enough makeup to completely change my face. To my amazement, it worked. Joe was charming and patient, explaining cellular respiration with an enthusiasm I'd never seen from him in person. "You're really smart," Emma told him, and I watched his face light up with pride. "Thanks, I like teaching. It helps me understand the material better, too. Over the next few weeks, Emma and Joe's relationship progressed from tutoring sessions to casual conversations to something that felt dangerously close to flirting. I found myself looking forward to our video calls with an intensity that should have been my first warning that this was getting out of hand. "I wish I could meet you in person," Joe said during one of our sessions. "I mean, I know we've talked about it, but you're always busy when I suggest it." "I'm just shy," Emma replied, which wasn't entirely a lie. "I'm not good with meeting new people." "That's okay. We can take our time." His smile was soft, different from the cocky grin I was used to seeing. "I like talking to you, Emma. You're easy to talk to." The irony wasn't lost on me. Joe found it easy to talk to me when he thought I was someone else entirely. As Emma, I learned things about him I'd never known despite living 15 feet away from him for over a year. He was stressed about medical school applications, worried that he wasn't smart enough despite his perfect GPA. He missed his family in California but was too proud to admit it. He'd never been in a serious relationship really cared about. "Sometimes I feel like I'm just pretending to be confident," he told Emma one night, "like everyone's going to figure out I'm just faking it." "We're all just faking it," Emma replied, and I meant it more than he could possibly know. The longer the deception went on, the more complicated my feelings became. I was falling for Joe, the real Joe, the one who showed vulnerability to Emma that he'd never shown to anyone else. But I was also trapped in an increasingly elaborate lie that was consuming more and more of my mental energy. In our dorm room, Joe started talking about Emma constantly. He'd show me screenshots of their conversations, asking for advice about what to say to her. It was torture, watching him light up when he talked about this girl who was really me, knowing that he barely noticed the real me sitting 3 feet away. "I think I'm really falling for her, Willie," he said one night, lying on his bed and staring at the ceiling. "I know that sounds crazy since we've never met in person, but she's just different. She really listens, you know." "That's great," I managed to say, my heart breaking and soaring simultaneously. "I want to ask her to be my girlfriend, but I'm scared she'll say no, or that when we finally meet, she won't like me in person." The guilt was eating me alive. Joe was genuinely falling for Emma, planning a future with her, and I was living a lie that was becoming more impossible to maintain every day. I knew I had to end it, but I didn't know how without devastating him. The decision was made for me on a rainy Tuesday in November. Joe had convinced Emma to finally meet him in person. We'd planned to meet at a coffee shop downtown. I'd been agonizing over how to get out of it when fate intervened in the form of my laptop dying completely, taking Emma's carefully constructed identity with it. I spent hours at the computer lab trying to recover the files, but it was hopeless. When Joe texted Emma asking where she was, there was no way for me to respond. I went back to our dorm room to find him pacing frantically. "She stood me up," he said, running his hands through his hair. "Emma just didn't show up. She's not answering her phone, not responding to messages. I don't understand what happened." "Maybe something came up," I offered weakly. "For 3 days?" He looked genuinely distraught. "I thought we had something real, you know?" I was going to tell her I loved her. The words hit me like a physical blow. He loved Emma. He loved me, in a way, but he didn't know it was me. I wanted to tell him the truth, but I was terrified of how he'd react. So I did nothing, and watched him sink into a depression that lasted weeks. Joe stopped bringing girls back to the room. He threw himself into his studies with an intensity that was almost frightening. He barely spoke to me, barely spoke to anyone. I tried to comfort him a few times, but he just brushed me off. "You wouldn't understand, Willie," he said. "You've never been in love." If only he knew. The truth came out in the most humiliating way possible. I'd been careless with my backup email account, the one I'd used to create Emma's social media profiles. I left it open on my laptop when I went to shower, and Joe, needing to use a computer for a last-minute assignment, saw the conversation threads. I came back from the bathroom to find him sitting at my desk, staring at my laptop screen with an expression I couldn't read. "Willie," he said quietly, not turning around, "what is this?" My blood turned to ice. What's what? This email account, these messages from Emma Richardson to various social media platforms, these photos of a girl who doesn't exist according to Google reverse image search. I stood frozen in the doorway, water still dripping from my hair, unable to form words. Joe finally turned around, and the look on his face was devastating. Hurt, betrayal, and something else I couldn't identify. Emma, was you. All this time, it was you. I wanted to deny it, to come up with some explanation, but there was no point. Joe, I can explain. Explain what? He stood up, and I could see his hands shaking. Explain how you've been lying to me for months? How you've been playing with my feelings for some sick joke. It wasn't a joke, I said desperately. It started as, I don't know what it started as, but it became something else. Joe, everything Emma said to you, everything she felt, that was real. That was me. You stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You're telling me that you've been pretending to be a girl to, what? Mock me? Get back at me for something? No, that's not foul. Because that's what this feels like, Willie. It feels like you've been laughing at me this whole time, watching me fall for someone who doesn't exist. She does exist. The words burst out of me with more force than I'd intended. I exist. Everything Emma felt for you, I feel for you. Everything she said, I meant. The only thing that wasn't real was the way I looked. Joe went very still. What are you saying? I took a shaky breath, knowing that this was it. The moment that would either destroy everything or save it. I'm saying that I've been in love with you since the day we moved in together. I'm saying that pretending to be Emma was the only way I could get close to you, the only way you'd see me as something more than furniture. I'm saying that every conversation we had, every moment you shared with Emma, those were the best moments of my life, because for once... The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Joe's face went through a series of expressions: shock, confusion, anger, and something else I was afraid to hope for. You're in love with me, he said finally. Yes. And he gestured vaguely, you're gay. Yes. And Emma, all of that was just you trying to get my attention. It was me trying to understand what it would feel like to have you care about me the way you cared about her. Joe sat down heavily on his bed, putting his head in his hands. I need to think about this. Joe. Please, Willie, I need some time. I spent the next 3 days in agony, barely eating, unable to concentrate on anything. Joe was polite but distant, treating me like a stranger. I was convinced I'd ruined everything, that our friendship was over and I'd have to find a new roommate for spring semester. Then on Friday night he came back to the room with a bottle of cheap wine and 2 plastic cups. We need to talk, he said. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He poured wine into both cups and handed me one. I've been thinking about everything you said, about Emma, about the lies, about your feelings. I waited, my heart hammering. I was angry at first, really angry. It felt like you'd stolen something from me, like you'd made me fall in love with a ghost. He took a sip of wine. But then I started thinking about the conversations we had. Emma and I mean, you and I. Joe, let me finish. He held up a hand. Those conversations were real. The feelings I developed were real. And if I'm being honest with myself, they weren't just for Emma. They were for the person I was talking to, which was you. I stared at him, not daring to breathe. I keep thinking about things Emma said, things that made so much sense, but only if I knew who was really saying them. Like when she told me that everyone's just faking confidence sometimes, or when she said she understood what it was like to feel invisible. You never made me feel invisible, I said quietly. Joe laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Willie, I treated you terribly. I treated you like you didn't matter, like you were just something to be tolerated. And you responded by caring about me anyway, by listening to me, supporting me even when I didn't deserve it. You're not a bad person, Joe. You never were. Maybe not bad, but definitely clueless. He met my eyes for the first time in days. Can I ask you something? Anything. When you were Emma, talking to me about relationships and feelings and all that, were you telling me how you really felt? About me? I nodded, not trusting my voice. And when Emma said she was falling in love with me, I meant every word. Joe was quiet for a long moment, staring into his wine cup. I told Emma I loved her the night before we were supposed to meet. I know. Do you know how that felt? Hearing that? Like my heart was going to explode, I whispered. Joe looked up at me, and there was something different in his expression. Softer, more open than I'd ever seen it. Willie, I need you to know something. When I thought Emma had ghosted me, I was devastated. Not just because I'd been rejected, but because I'd lost something real, someone who understood me. Joe, I'm not finished. He scooted closer to me on the bed. I've been trying to figure out how I feel about all this, about you. And the truth is, I don't know if what I felt for Emma can just transfer to you, or if it already was about you all along. I don't know if I'm straight or gay or something in between, but I know that when I think about losing you completely, it feels worse than losing Emma ever did. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might pass out. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe we could try to figure this out together, if you want to. He reached over and took my hand, his fingers warm and slightly trembling. I'm saying that the person I fell in love with was you, even if I didn't know it at the time, and maybe that's enough to start with. I stared down at our joined hands, hardly believing this was real. Are you sure? I lied to you for months, Joe. I deceived you in the worst possible way. You did, he agreed, and we'll have to work through that. But Willie, you lied because you loved me. It was wrong, but it wasn't malicious, and in the end, it let me see parts of you I never would have seen otherwise. I never meant for it to go so far, I said. I just wanted you to notice me. I noticed you, Joe said softly. I just didn't know how much until I thought I'd lost you. He leaned closer, and I could smell his familiar cologne, see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. Can I kiss you? I nodded, not trusting my voice. The kiss was soft, tentative, nothing like the confident way I'd seen him kiss all those girls. His lips were warm and slightly chapped, and when he pulled back, we were both breathing hard. Was that okay? He asked. More than okay, I whispered. Good. He smiled, and it was that soft smile I'd only seen him give to Emma. Because I'd like to do it again. Joe? Yeah? I love you, the real you, not just the version of you that Emma got to see. His smile widened. I love you too, Willie, and from now on, no more lies, just us, figuring this out together. Just us, I agreed. As he kissed me again, I realized that the deception that should have ruined everything had instead given us both the courage to be honest about who we really were. Sometimes the most complicated lies lead to the simplest truths, and the truth was that Joe and I belonged together, just as we were. 6 months later, we were still roommates, but now by choice rather than random assignment. Joe had switched his major to education. He'd discovered through tutoring Emma that he loved teaching more than medicine. I'd finally found the courage to submit my writing to the campus literary magazine, and we both learned that love doesn't always follow the path you expect it to. No more fake identities, Joe said one night as we lay in his bed, my head on his chest. Promise, I said. From now on, you're stuck with just Willie. Good, he murmured, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. Willie's my favorite.